So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out to vote for Republicans running in Congressional District 6 with your local Jack Nicklaus Hall Theatre at FCC on the Frederick Community College campus. My name is Cliff Dunbar. I'm the editorial page editor for the Frederick News Post. I'll be moderating tonight's event. We at the News Post and also the Herald Mail, who is co-sponsoring this event. Feel free to applaud at this point. As I say their name, we have Delegate Kathy Afzali. Senator David Brickley, Robert Gomez, Robin Pecker, Peter James, and again Joseph Kristopolsky. So thank you. Unfortunately, Dr. Bartlett won't be with us this evening. He is chairing a hearing in Washington, D.C., which has a voting session that lasts up until about 7 o'clock. So really the physics of getting here in time are probably not allowed in driving at that kind of speed. So we'll wish him good luck. Also, Brad Ripken cancelled. I believe that he had some events that ran over today and unfortunately couldn't make it before tonight. However, if any of them do make it on time, we will invite them up to the stage and they can join in with whatever's left of the floor. So, in a moment I'll ask the candidates to make their opening statements, but before we start I'd like to go over some rules for the audience. Make sure to turn off your cell phones. And the reason for that is these microphones are real touchy, so can't make it. At this time, I'd like to invite each of the candidates to give their 2-minute opening statements. We're going to take it in alphabetical order, starting with Delegate Afzali.
Well, good evening, everyone. Is it too loud? Sounds loud to me. I want to welcome all of you and I want to thank you for coming here tonight. My name is Kathy Afzali. I'm a Maryland state delegate, a local businesswoman, and a mom. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to introduce myself for you tonight. I realize some of you may know me, some of you might not know who I am. But you have a very important job to do. And before next Tuesday or on next Tuesday, you will be deciding who will be your Republican nominee to face a very tough Democrat out of Montgomery County. And the person that you choose may go to Congress, and that person may have the very, very important responsibility of representing you and being your voice in our U.S. Congress. And I'm hoping that you'll believe that I'm that person. I am certainly not your run-of-the-mill candidate. I am a little bit out of the box, as some of you might know from my history here in Frederick County. I am someone who gets something done. I am not a passenger. I am a driver. I've been very active in the Maryland State Legislature. And I also have a to-do list. I did that when I ran for delegate, and I also have a to-do list for Congress. And it begins with number 1. I will never vote to raise the debt ceiling. Number 2, Congress should not have laws that they don't have to follow themselves. Number 3 is to repeal Obamacare. Number 4, secure our borders. Number 5, repeal onerous regulations like Davis-Bacon and other contracting regulations and things that inhibit our businesses from competing globally. Number 6, implement the fair tax or flat tax to simplify our tax code. And number 8, energy independence. We need national security through energy independence. And number 9, I-270 infrastructure spending improvements. And I thank you for being here. I look forward to your questions, and it'll be an interesting evening. PathofCongress.com.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to Senator Brickley. 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name is David Brickley, and I was born in Frederick, and I've lived 52 years in the center of the 6th Congressional District, and many of you know that I was born here in Frederick. My public service began as a volunteer firefighter and an EMT in Newmarket. Twice I was elected to the House of Delegates, and I'm currently serving and have the honor to represent Frederick and Carroll County in the State Senate, my 3rd term in the Senate. And I'm also currently chair of the Frederick County delegation. I have one of the Senate's highest pro-jobs rating, and I am endorsed by a majority of the Republican state officials in the district and Mayor Randy McClement. But this election is not about me. It's a referendum on the incumbents. So to paraphrase Ronald Reagan, are you better off, are we better off, Is America better off today than we were 20 years ago because of something Roscoe Bartlett did in Congress? And if not, then I ask you for your vote. It's incumbents who caused our fiscal crisis, our incumbent too. I've supported Roscoe Bartlett for 20 years, and I might have again if things were different, if things were better, or if Congress was listening. But stunningly, by his own admission, he has cast many, many votes against good bills, and he has cast many, many votes for bad bills, and in doing so, he has supported bigger budgets, higher taxes, higher gas prices, higher debt limits, and cuts to our military. That's just the way it is, he said, he quoted. Well, it doesn't have to be, and that's why I'm running for Congress. We got into this mess one election at a time, and beginning April 3rd, that's just how we can get out of it. I'm David Brinkley. I'm asking for your vote April 3rd. I am very appreciative that you showed up tonight to listen to the candidates as we share our ideas back and forth. Thanks again.
Thank you. Moving on to your right, left. We'll now go to Mr. Koblenz for your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you to the Frederick News Post, Herald Mail, WFMD, Frederick Community College, and especially all of you for coming tonight. My name is Robert Koblenz. I was born and raised in Frederick County, Middletown area, Koblenz Road. My parents divorced when I was 8 years old, kind of migrated around the county, ended up graduating from Walkersville High School. Lived in Thurmont for a brief stint. But I moved out to Washington County about 7 years ago, and my home right now is Williamsport. So I still live in the district, somewhat disappointed but not entirely surprised. The two folks to my right didn't mention that they don't live in the district. I feel that is a liability, especially when you're in the general election, when you're advocating to independent voters. I think that the Democrats will utilize that as a tool to kind of siphon those votes off. I am not a career politician. I'm a project manager, senior systems analyst for Online University. And as a project manager, I'm responsible for other people's money. And if I handled the taxpayer money, or if I handled project money as Congress handles taxpayer money, I'd be fired. I became involved in politics during the 2008 presidential election. I was actually an independent at the time. It just became crystal clear to me where my principles and values were on the political spectrum. So I helped out as much as I could. And in 2010, I was the county director for the Rutledge for U.S. Senate campaign. Although he didn't win the primary, he did win Washington County by a 10% margin. So we have good, solid grassroots, and we articulate conservative principles and ideas. I'm a commissioner for the Housing Authority of Washington County. I serve as on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I also serve as a member of the Tri-County Council. And I'm running for Congress because I believe it's time that someone takes a stand on principle and returns power back to the states and to the people of this great country. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now move on to Mr. Ficker for your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you. I know we're supposed to be sitting down here today, but I don't sit down when I'm in court. The people arguing against the individual mandate in the Supreme Court weren't sitting down. Congressmen don't sit down when they're speaking on the floor. And when I'm in Congress, I'm not going to be sitting around at all. I'm going to be serving you. Let's talk about jobs. I'm not running for Congress. I'm running for Congress and jobs. Let's talk about the job of a state legislator. I was in the legislature. I know that many state legislators run for Congress in the middle of their term when they don't have to give up their seat. It's happened many times, but it's never happened before that a legislator has run for Congress in a congressional district that is completely outside the legislative district. Usually people want to serve their constituents more by going to Congress. Here we have two legislators who are running away from their constituents. They're running in the 6th district, but all their constituents are in the 8th district. That's not a good thing to do, especially when you have Chris Van Hollen, who is the most partisan congressman in Congress. He was head of the Congressional Campaign Committee. Why don't they run against Chris Van Hollen? Chris Van Hollen was on the Congressional Secret Budget Committee. He fought every attempt to cut the budget. Why don't these folks run against Chris Van Hollen? Joe Christoforski lives near the fair, not the Frederick Fair, the State Fair in Timonium in Cockeysville. Why doesn't he run against Elijah Cummings? I live in this district. I fought to keep your taxes down. I led the fight against the gas tax increase with my ads, emails, and calls. I'm going to fight for you.
Okay, one other reason we've asked the candidates to remain seated is because the mics here may not translate to online, so...
I'll talk loud.
Go right ahead.
My name is Peter James. I live down in Germantown. With virtually no money and a very late start, I ran for Congress because I wanted to warn everybody in 2008 of the banking collapse. And I won by double digits. The Central Committee thought I was a big joke, but I wrote a very good mailer. I couldn't mail to everyone, but I mailed to the people that need to be mailed. I don't know if any of you have seen the Moneyball movie. That's when the Oakland A's won 20 games when they had the 1/5 the amount of money that the Yankees had. And believe me, the Democrats are going to pile on. They've already got close to $4 million now they spent in the primary. Imagine how much you're going to spend in the general. But I am the Constitution guy. I want to go back to the original intent of the Constitution before FDR threatened to pack the court. And basically, the Supreme Court 1937 said everybody, the Congress could do whatever the heck they wanted. And what we're seeing last couple days now at the Supreme Court is just a symptom of the interpretation of the General Welfare Clause. So make sure everybody gets their just money. And the back page is a list of enumerated powers. I've been going to forums with these guys. I'm the only guy who's basically not mentioned something outside the realm of the enumerated powers of the Constitution. When people come to me to fix things, my first job out of college, I ran a company called Renaissance Consulting. We were premier consultants in Silicon Valley. Intel came to us and said, we're the fastest growing company in the country. We need help with our cost control system. So we designed that for them. But my main goal is fixing our monetary system. And please go see Money is Debt. That's why I'm wearing this shirt instead of a suit. I'm a walking billboard. So, well, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Christoforski.
Hello, my name is Joe Christoforski, and I guess I have to answer what Robin said. How many people in this room live in the 6th District? Show of hands. I live in the 6th District. The boundaries of the 6th District don't actually change until January 2010 for representation in Congress. You could vote now for Congress in the 6th District, but we all still live in the 6th District. And come the general election, I will be living in the 6th District. I currently have a real estate agent looking for homes for me and property here, and if anybody wants their number, I'll be glad to give you the real estate agent's number. I've got 35 years experience in healthcare, banking, finance and technology, community service, and the political arena. I'll use my influence, my experience across multiple disciplines as a CEO, business executive, entrepreneur, and I'll return common sense to the House of Representatives. My legislative priorities are all national security issues, the economy and fiscal accountability. We have to reduce the national debt and deficit, cut spending, send a balanced budget to the states, with spending limits and emergency action provisions, and we have to reduce our dependency on foreign sources to fund the government, and we have to pass a fair and equitable tax code. Energy self-reliance, we must increase domestic exploration and production, embrace free market-driven innovation and diversification of our sources to include biodiesel, coal gasification, nuclear, natural gas, geothermal, and when the time is right, solar and wind. The time is not right now. Immigration, we have to secure our borders, first and foremost. Implement E-Verify. Enforce immigration laws. No jobs for illegal aliens. No benefits for illegal aliens with impunity. No amnesty with impunity. No in-state tuition. And reserve birthright citizenship for children of U.S. citizens and resident aliens. The economy, Jobs, rising energy prices, community development, economic development, and infrastructure are the basic priorities for both the urban and rural areas of the 6th District. I ask you to go to my website. I have plenty of detail out there. Joe Christoforski, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Please give him a round of applause. We'll take closing statements in reverse order. So we're going to start with Mr. Christoforski and Mrs. Afzali down here, just so you're aware. So on to the main part of tonight's events. Let me take a moment here, explain the rules and protocols here as we go through them. We're going to have 5 rounds tonight. First of all, we're going to have a lightning round. That's where we'll ask candidates 1 question each. They'll each have a minute to answer. There are all going to be different questions for everybody. Our second round is going to allow a little more time to maybe go hopefully a tiny bit deeper on some of our questions, and also let the other candidates chime in. We're going to ask, call them response rounds. You're going to have 1.5 minutes. And then what we're going to do is give the other candidates 3 minutes. You can use 1 minute on each question that you choose. So, for example, if I ask you a question, Mrs. Afzali, and 3 candidates want to use 1 of their minutes to respond to your question, they may do so. And you may do so to the other main questions that I ask the other candidates. Then we're going to take probably a much-needed 10-minute break around about the end of that response round. We'll come back for another lightning round just to get everybody's minds moving again after the break. And to mix things up a bit, we're going to end with about a 10 to 20-minute round where we're going to take questions from the audience. I don't know if you saw them walking in, but if you get an opportunity, please fill out an index card if you have a question for the audience, a question for the candidates. We'll collect those index cards, and we'll certainly make every effort to use as many of those as we can. We're also going to solicit some questions from our online audience. We'll gather those in the break, and then we'll have the audience round you'll get a chance to respond directly to the people asking questions out there in the audience. Finally, we're going to have closing statements. Like I said, in reverse order, you'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds for your closing statements. So, let's get on to our first round, which is our lightning round. And remember, candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. And we're going to start here with Mrs. Afzali. Should the Keystone Pipeline be approved? And do you have any concerns about the environmental impact of the proposed route?
Well, I'm a huge proponent of the Keystone Pipeline. I'm a huge proponent in searching and drilling for those natural sources of natural gas and oil that we have in this great nation. I have been an opponent of Congressman Bartlett's position on that. He's been against drilling. He's actually, on numerous occasions, voted against drilling in this country, both in Anwar and in the Gulf. And I think this has been a travesty because this was back during the Bush administration, and prior to that, if we had started drilling back then, we certainly wouldn't be having some of the issues with supply and demand that we're having now. Now, we can drill in an environmentally safe way. We have natural gas out in western Maryland that is about 40 years worth of gas to heat our homes here. We want to be certain that we tap into those sources. And also, we can do it in a clean way, environmentally friendly way. Windmill, nuclear, all of that is not going to work. We need to drill now.
Thank you very much. The minute goes fast, as you can tell. Mr. Brinkley, the Stock Act, which would prevent congressmen and women from trading on insider information, is on its way to President Obama for his signature. Does it go far enough?
Well, the thing that's amazing, I always thought that insider trading was illegal as it was. I have a securities license in my business. I do financial planning for people, so yeah, we have a securities license and have to abide by those guidelines. So then to learn that it doesn't apply in some way, shape, or form, I think is preposterous. It must apply, but you're right. We do have to try to get a leg up. Some of the opponents to it have said, well, there's going to be an increased supervisory cost. Well, tough. There has to be. Because people can't be profiting from their role as a public servant. That's exactly what we are when we are elected to serve people. And we have an obligation, and frankly, I want to take this opportunity to commend the Congressman. I would love to have him here so we can talk about things, but he's fulfilling his elected role and responsibility by, representing us down in Washington. So, absolutely, I can support that thing, and I think it should be signed very quickly.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Koblenz, many on this panel, I think, would agree that the government is too large. What areas of federal government specifically do you believe we can without? how will those services be provided elsewhere, if at all?
Actually, first, repeal Obamacare. That's 1/6 of our economy. I see that at the Supreme Court. Obamacare takes nearly a quarter of all seniors rely on Medicare Advantage. But Obamacare makes such deep cuts to that program that nearly half of those are going to lose their coverage. It's unconstitutional. It's unworkable. It's unprecedented in the federal overreach of mandates and the power that the federal government tries to put onto the American people. I'd also like to cut discretionary spending as much as possible. I'd like to see redundant programs that would work best in the private market. As you know, the federal government gives grants to the states to work on the roads. I think if we introduced a private market to work directly with the states, those funds would not be misappropriated and they would stay in the transportation fund and not rated for other initiatives.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Mr. Flicker. The approval rating for Congress hovers at about 12%. I suppose it could be worse. Can this terrible rating be improved? If so, how? Oh, the approval rating for Congress hovers at about 12%.
Wow.
Can it be improved?
It's not going to go up very much while we've got $4 gasoline. I'll tell you that. I had to fill up on the way up here, and I emptied out my wallet. And I think that's what's happening to you too here. As long as Congress is forbidding the Keystone Pipeline, as long as they're not allowing drilling, as long as they're not developing the shale, Marcellus Shale in western Maryland so we can have natural gas to put in these 18-wheelers instead of this smelly stuff that they spew out on us. As long as we're not developing our resources, I don't think Congress...
So just let me know, and feel free to sort of holler if you wish to respond. We're going to start once again at this end of the table with Delegate Afzali. As Congress begins to wade into a new 5-year farm bill in an election year, farming subsidies seem very much on the table, especially cutting those subsidies. What cuts to the farm bill would you support? What should be kept as part of this legislation?
Well, that's a very good question. As some of you know, I'm a huge proponent of agriculture here in Maryland. I was the author and hopefully will pass this year of the estate tax relief for farmers. With that said, I don't necessarily believe that we need to cut all the subsidies at this time. Right now, our farming communities are under assault. Barack Obama, through executive order, has passed regulation upon regulation, environmentally speaking, on farmers, especially here in the Chesapeake Bay region. And part of this has to do with nutrient management. And then our governor has one-upped it and forced all this regulation upon our agriculture and our producers. So at this time, I don't think we should cut all of the subsidies because we don't want to lose our food source. A lot of people are talking about farm to home. We want to be certain that we keep our farmers farming. With that said, I don't think this should be taken as that I'm for broad subsidy of any business. But right now, with the farmers hurting so much, especially with these unfunded mandates, some of these farmers are going to be put out of business because of the mandates that have come from Obama through O'Malley and straight to them to our Maryland farms. So we want to be certain that we continue to support them and then wean them appropriately and over time, but not immediately removing those subsidies.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Brinkley, you would like to use 1 minute to respond?
Thank you. You can't be serious about addressing the federal deficit unless you're going to put everything on the table. I've been very fortunate to be able to offer alternate budgets in Annapolis. You know, it's one thing to complain about what the governor's done with his budgets, but part of what we were successful in proposing for three years were alternatives to it. You know, you have to offer a solution to something. So, is it important for farm subsidies? Absolutely. But you know, we also hear an awful lot about the abuses. When we hear about billionaires, Ted Turner, You know, with a multi-thousand acre ranch that's benefiting from some of that, is that right? No, it's not. Is there a place for it? Yes. But we have to be willing to address everything if we're going to stop digging the hole deeper and then ultimately to try to fill it back up for our future generations and this economy.
Thank you very much. I believe, Mr. James, you had your hand.
Yes.
And then Mr. Christoforski, and then Mr. Ficker.
Well, I am a farmer. I run First Fruits Farm down on Brink Road. It's the world's first robotic renewable energy farm. There's $700 million worth of R&D subsidies that I can take. I in good conscience can. And this is just an example of when you vote for me, this won't be a question you have to ask, because the enumerated powers don't allow for almost all the subsidies except for it has in there post office and post roads. So you won't have to ask. You won't be wondering, I wonder if Peter will vote for that. There's a fellow who's not here tonight who's been putting on ads, and he's going to subsidize getting rid of stink bugs. My tomato crop was wiped out last summer with stink bugs. But I don't see any authority Congress has to give these subsidies, let alone they're not very good at doing the things that need to be done anyway. That's a free market, and in good conscience, I can't lie to you. I can't steal from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Christoforski, you had your hand raised, and then we'll take Mr. Ficker.
We can't have our cake and eat it too. We asked the federal government to cut spending, and then we still want subsidies in different areas and different industries. I think farm subsidies are important to some extent, but we have to eliminate those farm subsidies that are going to Park Avenue billionaires and millionaires that never farm, that just have farmland. And there's quite a bit number of those subsidies in the last farm bill that passed, and they're in the current farm bill. There are items in the farm bill that have nothing at all to do with farming, and those items have to be taken out of the bill. We have to make sure that we cut intelligently and not with a broadsword, that we cut surgically and cut those subsidies surgically. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ficker.
I want to say unequivocally, without any question, I'm for the farmer. There's a lot of farmers in this district, and I'm going to be the friend of the farmer in this district. I have a farm right on Barnesville Road. Had steers, bought them up at the Westminster Livestock Auction, had them for the summertime. They gained 500-700 pounds apiece. Sold them back up there. Grown corn, peaches, tomatoes, lots of sunflowers, got horses. I'm for the farmer. However, I'm not for subsidizing these big corporate farms that are sending their foodstuffs over to China. China's doing right well as it is. So let's support our local farmers. Let's keep our agriculture happy, healthy, and keep our farmers happy here in Maryland. And if any of you farmers have a problem, call me at 301-652-1500. I always answer the phone. I don't depend on whether I know the number or not. I'll answer your call.
Great, thank you. Did I see anybody else who wishes to answer? No. Okay, great. We'll move on to our response question for Mr. Brinkley. 1 week ago today, House Republicans laid out their budget plan, which included the Medicaid cuts, reshaping Medicare, reshuffling the tax code, and cutting higher education funding. Do you agree with this approach? What do you favor in the plan, and what do you object to?
I certainly think, pardon me, I think it's a step in the right direction, because as I said earlier in one of my answers, we've got to stop digging this hole. Let's levelize it, then we can start worrying about having to fill it back in. And part of one of the solutions that I see, and I don't know that it's all encompassing, but in my experience with the state budget, is for the federal government to take some of its money for health care and block grant it to the states. If they say to the state of Maryland, you're going to get X dollars, the state of Maryland can better decide and quantify where its resources should go. When you look at urban needs versus rural needs and things of that sort, that's one potential solution. Why? Because it certainly puts a cap on where we're going. Healthcare expenses are part of what's driving this beast, and you know, it's almost reached an exponential level of increase. And so that certainly is one of the challenges. The other issue that they were addressing by was trying to get a cap on some of the taxes, try to ensure that we can keep taxes low. One of the big impediments that we have to investment in jobs in this country is our corporate tax rate. I've heard one of the panelists here say it should come down to 12 to 13%. No, it needs to go lower. And we have sufficient resources that we can quantify to even a 0% tax rate where those resources go into certain communities and for certain jobs. Case in point, Apple Computer, billions of dollars offshore. They would be strongly penalized by bringing it into this country. We don't want those jobs in China. We want them here. We want them in Western Maryland. We'd love to have them here in Frederick and down in Montgomery County. And that's one method to get those resources back in this country.
Thank you very much. I saw Mr. Christopolski's hand raised, then Mrs. Afzali, then Mr. Ficker. Okay, so we'll start with Mr. Christopolski.
I don't think it goes far enough. They're proposing to save $5.3 trillion over a 10-year period. First, current Congresses cannot hold future Congresses to spending cuts, number one. $5.3 trillion over a 10-year period is $5.3 billion a year. The interest on our current debt at the level it's at now is over $580 billion a year. So their cut doesn't even cover the interest on our current debt. They have to go further, and they have to go deeper. We have to eliminate all special interest subsidies. I'm not talking about farm subsidies, but some other special interest subsidies that are out there. And Congress has to disclose all their earmarks. Earmarks, when people think earmarks, you think it's money that Congress has taken away and given to somebody, but it's money that's already been appropriated in the budget and just being reallocated. We should cut spending, current spending, to 85% of the 2010-2011 levels. Go to the agencies and tell them to cut now, and they will not suffer, and we will end up saving money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Afzali, you're next.
Thank you. I think that you can't address any of these things until you approach broad-based tax reform. And by that, I mean lowering the corporate tax rate, going to a flat tax for every individual, and cutting out all the loopholes, except for the mortgage interest and charitable deductions. If we don't approach it from that level, we are constantly going to be having a supply problem in terms of saying that there's not enough money. And then there has to be cuts. I mean, we talk about, Senator Brinkley was talking about block granting down to the states. I do disagree with that approach. A lot of these programs were set by the federal government. Medicare and Social Security, which has been mentioned in some of our other debates. These were federally mandated programs, and then now the feds started these programs. Now you're going to force the states to pay for them. That is not the right way to go. That will break the states. The states are already broke, some of them, and that's just not the way to go.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ficker, you were next.
Yes. David mentioned that he's been presenting alternate budgets. One of his main thrusts was to transfer all those state teacher pension costs back to the counties. That means we're going to have big property tax increases. He's saving money at the state level. We're getting the bill back here in the counties. David, the next time you think about proposing an alternate budget, please call me.
You got fired as a legislator.
Here's where we can cut our budget. Bring those guys home. I'm the only one up here that has an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army, attended the United States Military Academy. Bring those boys home from Afghanistan right now. And don't get involved in Iran. Iran is 5 times as large as Iraq, has 3 times as many people. There's not going to be any budget savings from bringing the guys home from Afghanistan if we go to Iran.
Thank you very much. Mr. James.
Yes. First of all, see what I mean? Jefferson said that if we interpret this general welfare clause to mean Congress can do anything it wants, there's no amount of mischief that Congress can't get into. And so, if you elect any of these, they're going to go down there and somebody say, well, gee, I'll give you your pork if you give me my pork. And that's how it happens, and that's why the approval rating is so low. But we've got to understand how money works. It's the best kept secret in America. We have $2.3, $2.4 trillion worth of money that exists. If we knock off and balance the budget down to 1.5, knock off 1.5 trillion, we're going to have 1.5 trillion less money in circulation. That's a depression. So we have to fix both. If we uphold the Constitution, we can spend at the federal level 10%. And then it all goes down to the state where you guys have more control. So if you want subsidies for this or that or anything, Maryland can take care of that. I'm sure we can get David to stick around and handle that for you at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to use a minute? All right. Moving on to Mr. Koblenz. What is the best way for America to retain or expand its dominance in the world's economy?
Unleash the American people. We have to provide predictability and confidence in an environment to promote business. We have to make entrepreneurs and business owners feel comfortable and confident in investing in new and existing businesses. This will allow American workers to feel more comfortable and confident in their job, knowing that they're not going to lose their job. Knowing that they don't have to save more money and wonder if and hopefully contribute to more retirement savings. And allow the unemployed to get off unemployment and start working towards their American dream and start building that up again. If we move to a flat and fair tax of 12 to 15%, you hear a lot about the one percenters, and they're not paying their fair share. Well, what is the fair share of the 47% that pay no taxes at all? If we move to a 12 or 15% flat tax, without broadening the tax base, allow everybody to contribute into society, everybody uses essential services, police, fire, national defense, and if we allow and promote businesses, they talked about the corporate tax rate. If we cut it to 0% or 5%, we'll make up that revenue lost in taxes just by the amount of job creation we'll have. And we won't have to lose money on the other side because we're not paying so much in jobless benefits. We have to encourage American business and the American people and return power back to the states and back to the people, because that's where government works best, state and local governments.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vicker, you can use your final minute.
Okay, the question is about expanding U.S. influence. One way, let me give you a local example about how we can expand our influence. If the politicians will not talk out both sides of their mouth, that's what the Democrats running for Congress here in the 6th District are doing. When they're in Baltimore and over in Prince George's County, oh yes, I'm for the red line in Baltimore. I'm for the purple line in Baltimore. Then they come up here in Frederick, they're for widening 270. There's not the money to do all that. I'm for widening 270 with 2 reversible lanes, and I'm opposed to the purple line, and I'm opposed to the red line. There's one example. Now, let's give you another one. Apple. You've all heard of Apple. I'm a stockholder. I'm going to go and see Tim Cook, and I'm going to ask him, why do you have 500,000 jobs in China and Japan and only 10,000 here in the United States, Mr. Cook? And what can we do? What can I do to jawbone you and convince you to change, reverse that employment number?
Thank you very much, Mr. Vicker. That is all your minutes used. Do I see anybody else who would like to speak? Mr. Christoforski, you can use your final minute.
We need to put America back to work. The U.S. ranks 13th in the ease of business creation to start a business. We should be ranked number 1, not number 13. We're the free market country. We're the free enterprise country. Businesses create jobs. Government does not create jobs. But government can help businesses create jobs. And the way that we can do that is by flattening the tax code, reducing the corporate tax code, limit regulations to regulations that are indisputably required. I don't think anybody would want to open up and limit all regulations and open up business, open up everything to a Wild West environment. But limit it to indisputably required. We have to open up our markets to overseas goods. Open up overseas markets to our goods. And we have to rein in the National Labor Relations Board. If we remove the barriers that limit predictability and economic growth, businesses will take risks, they'll invest, they'll expand, and they'll create new opportunities. We have to emancipate the economy, not stimulate the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christoforski. That is your 3 minutes done. Would anybody else care to take a minute to answer that question? No, great. We'll move on to Mr. Vicker. Mr. Brinkley, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, first off, we can't forget that we still are the dominant world's supreme economic power and military power. Yes, we see it sliding. We saw where Ronald Reagan was able to get us back to where we felt good about ourselves. We have a lack of confidence in this current president when he goes around the world apologizing for everything that goes wrong. But also we have to take a look at this. Secure our borders. That's number one thing we have to do. We have to stop having our phones answered in India. You know, at this point in time, it's easier to get into this country than it is to get on an aircraft to fly in this country. They're going to grope you when you go through TSA. I mean, some of the things that we're seeing are absurd. They are reactions to some things. We can't forget that we are certainly the best at what we have. And so we have American workers willing to do work. We have to get that capital back here. And you know, we have tremendous opportunity, and we cannot lose faith in this country of what, you know, our fathers gave to us and what we have to take care and nurture for our children. It's still here. It's still great.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Afsani, 1 minute.
Thank you. I felt inspired after listening to some of the others, and somebody said something about confidence. And I think until we get a new president, we are going to be suffering from a lack of confidence. What's happened is we have corporations and businesses sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars of cash throughout this country, and they're sitting on it because they're scared. They don't know what to do. They don't know what's going to happen with regulation. They don't know what's going to happen with Obamacare. So they're sitting on all of this cash, waiting to do something. They don't want to grow. They don't want to hire people until they know for certain what the future is. So confidence is a key factor in getting this country back on track with our economy. I am a free market capitalist. We are over-regulated. We are overtaxed. We need to get rid of these regulations. We need to unleash our businesses, let them compete globally so they don't have to incorporate offshore to avoid taxes. We need to let our innovators go to work.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any more takers? This one's been a surprisingly successful question. So great. We'll move on to Mr. Ficker for your main question. The Senate will take up debate on postal reform as early as tomorrow evening, meaning lines are going to be drawn between urban and rural lawmakers. A split we'll have to familiarize ourselves with here in this newly redrawn 6th District. Which of the competing plans being proposed would you favour if you had your say on this legislation in the House? And what would be your suggestions for getting the USPS back on track?
Two things I would do with that postal service right from the get-go. One, I'd try to get back our distribution center here in Frederick. It's ridiculous that our mail has to go all the way down to Baltimore to get sorted, and then arrives here 2 weeks late. Then I'd get the sorting facility back in Cumberland. They've taken it out of there too. Politics is local. I would look after my constituents. Cumberland already has high unemployment, so what do? They send a big postal sorting center out of Cumberland. That's because whoever's supposed to be representing this area doesn't have enough clout, or isn't working hard enough, or isn't taking the time to go talk to these postal facility people that are making these big decisions. Look, the amount of mail is decreasing. There's no question about it. You're sending out a lot of emails. Kathy sent out emails last night. I'm sending out email blasts. We're not mailing that stuff. The volume's going down, but the pensions are also overloaded for some of these postal employees. We can't afford to pay people to sit around and not work. The money should go to people that are working, and some of the retirement ages are going to have to be adjusted. We can't allow people to collect pensions when they're 50 years old. We can't pay people not to work.
Thank you very much. Would anybody care to use their final minute on the postal service question? In that case, we will move on to Mr. James. Mr. James, we have a foreign policy question for you here. What approach would you advocate toward Iran? Would you consider a preemptive military strike should circumstances dictate action? And what would those circumstances be, in your opinion?
Well, never. The key word is defense. To say we're going to be preemptive strikes, I mean, this is what I see our whole country sliding in. There's so many similarities of what happened in Germany in the 30s. I'm half Greek, and I haven't really been concerned about Iran invading somewhere since Xerxes invaded in 300 BC. We have been controlled by fear. When you're fearful, your blood goes to your extremities, fight or flight. Our gut doesn't have the blood to sustain ourselves, so we become sick. We can't keep being in a constant state of fear. Winston Churchill said the only thing to fear is fear itself. Now, we need to be rational. If, you know, when Tim McVeigh blew up the federal building, we didn't invade Oklahoma. There's something in the Constitution called the letter of marque and reprisals. And it was used for the Barbary Coast pirates. But basically it says, if there's a terrorist attack, you name the people you go after. The Mujahideen were Al-Qaeda. We knew who they were. We funded them. You give a list of the people you go after, where you're going to go, when you're going to be back, and take care of it surgically. You don't blow away somebody's belly to get at a little tumor. You get a scalpel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I saw Mr. Koblenz's finger come up first, so we'll go to you, and then Mr. Ficker.
Thank you. If anything, this really shows how important domestic energy policy is. Iran and the folks in the Middle East, you know, a lot of Democrats say, well, you can't drill more your way out of it, you know. But every time Iran acts up and threatens to close the Strait of Hormuz, they say, oh, well, the Saudis, they'll just pump more and, you know, they'll take care of it. I think we do need to continue the sanctions, especially the economic ones, and tighten them down as much as possible. I am for a preemptive strike, but I don't want another Iraq. I think we need clear, irrefutable evidence that Iran does have a nuclear weapon. Also, what is the plan after a preemptive strike? We need a holistic plan. We need some sort of strategy. If you think $4 or $5 gallon of gas is expensive today, wait until Iran has a nuclear weapon and we're held hostage because we don't have any domestic energy policy.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid, Mr. Ficker, I misspoke. You've used your 3 minutes. You need to sit on your hands for the rest of the round. Would anybody else care to answer? Mr. Brinkley, you have one more 1 minute response left.
Thank you. Regarding foreign policy, number one, we should never forget that in the Middle East there's but one democracy, and that's Israel. And Israel is our ally. I mean, there's no doubts, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So we need to certainly make sure that she's safe and secure, so that she's our eyes and ears. And frankly, if there ever is any type of opportunity to do a surgical strike, that's probably where it would come from. The number one responsibility of the federal government is to secure those of us within the borders. And if it entails taking a surgical action, it should be so. And if anybody who doubts that, the black swan event that we all recall is 9/11. You know, is forever in our minds about that. But then, you know, we also have a problem when we have the President of the United States on a hot mic yesterday, when he talks about telling Russia, wait until after the election, I can then work with you. I have to talk tough now. How absurd is that, and how are our allies supposed to think that we're really going to be there to ensure our mutual security?
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No? Very good. Then we'll move on to our final question for the round. We're moving back from Iran, firmly back into Maryland. Mr. Christoforski, for those people who commute to Baltimore, D.C., the state of I-70 and 270 is very much on their minds. Transportation funding used to be a simple bipartisan issue. However, in Congress, a number of conservatives and Tea Party members believe the responsibility for transportation should devolve to the states. How can we keep funding for critical roads projects flowing? Or should the building, repair, and maintenance of the nation's transportation infrastructure be each state's responsibility?
I believe the infrastructure in this country needs to be addressed, but it has to be addressed at the state level, and it is addressed at the state level today. At the federal level, we appropriate funds, and then the appropriated funds are allocated to the states, and the states make the decision on where those funds are going to be spent. So it's really up to their state legislatures to address the issues on Route 270, on Interstate 70. They're the ones that have to decide what they're going to do with the funds that are allocated to them from the federal government. So my stance is roadways, infrastructure, it's a state's issue with appropriate and allocate funds from the appropriations from the federal government to the state level.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take Mrs. Afzali first, then we're going to take Mr. James, and Mr. Copeland, you have one more left. I'm afraid you're all out, Ms. Brinkley, and then everybody else is out. So let's take Mrs. Afzali first.
Yes, I-270, it's a tough road to go if you are someone who has to commute up and down the road. It does come from federal money. It's very important that your congresswoman be an advocate for that federal money. Of course we want to get our fiscal house in order first, but that job of your congresswoman is to be certain that you advocate for those federal funds for that road improvement. Our current congressman has not advocated for those funds, and he says he can't get it. It has to go through the state. Well, I'll tell you, he did get almost a $5 million bond to put a freeway ramp from his farm to 270. So if he can get that done, he can certainly bring you money back for the rest of us so that we can get back and forth to work to those job centers in Montgomery County, Western Maryland, commuting down there. We want to be certain that we secure that federal funding. Yes, it does have to go through the state. I'm completely against the red line and the purple line, as one of my fellow candidates had said. But it is incumbent on your congresswoman to make sure that you are an advocate for those federal funds.
Thank you very much. It was between Mr. Copeland and Mr. James. I didn't see them, but they're first. Who would like the first word? Who would like the last word? Mr. Copeland.
I think the main issue here is accountability. The Department of Transportation Federal Highway System, they allocate about $50 billion a year to the states, and most of that consists of grants. Federal financing has become increasingly inefficient, an efficient way to modernize our transportation highway system, because all those funds are often misallocated. They're taken out of the transportation fund and used for other pet projects or low-value activities. Not to mention the regulations and that go along with federal aid that stifles innovation and increased costs. I think if we allow, I believe if we take the taxpayers and the transportation users, cut the federal gas tax, allow private industry to work with the states to hold the state accountable, and making sure that all of your taxpayer dollars are funded towards infrastructure, not other projects.
Thank you very much, Mr. James. Your final minute.
Yes, again, go back to your Constitution. There's nothing in there. Under the pretense of defense, Eisenhower got this lovely transportation system funded, but now we're seeing all these federal mandates, drinking age, things, all these mandates in order to get these funds in a manner of extortion. I would rather get rid of that at the federal level and give you back the federal tax. I think it's 14 cents for gas and 28 cents for diesel. Give that money back to the states and let Mr. Ficker fight Gargiola over how much they're going to increase the taxes here, but then you can decide which projects you want to spend that money. Why send it to the state, have them, the federal government, have them put all those conditions on it, and then send it back, and really, we'll all be freshmen, so, you know, who do you think is going to get the bulk of the funds? It's the guys that have been in there for 20 years or so. And so, really, go back to your Constitution.
Excellent. On that note, we'll end it for now. We're going to take a 10-minute break. But before we do, please give them a round of applause. So that brings us to 8 p.m. on the dot. We'll reconvene here in 10 minutes' time at 8.